This con.
Thank you all for showing up, coming to our special board meeting, West Basin Municipal Water District, April 16th, 1 p.m. It is now 1 minute after 1. So we have a quorum. So I will call the meeting to order. And we're down to already to item number 3, public comments.
Yeah, thank you, President Williams. We do not have any public comment today.
Well, how about presentations?
We do not have any presentations today either, President Williams.
Then that takes us to the action calendar.
Likewise, President Williams, we have no items on the action calendar today.
Then we'll move right to item number 6 is information calendar. And it looks like we have one item there. So I will give control of the program or agenda to our general manager.
Again, thank you, President Williams, members of the board and the public and staff. I want to echo what President Williams said. Thank you, board members, for your time to attend. We've had a lot of activities lately and certainly a lot of board workshops for our budget. And of course, thank you as always, staff, for the incredible amount of work that you've put into this whole effort. Just a quick review. Obviously, this is our 3rd workshop. The first one was our general overview, as you're aware, of the whole budgetary process. Our 2nd workshop back on March 24th focused on the expense side of the ledger. And today we shift focus over to the other side, and that's the revenues, which is really essentially our water sales, potable and recycled water sales, and the assumptions around those sales. So that's going to be the focus today. And just a reminder that coming right up on Monday, this coming Monday, April 19th at 1 o'clock, we will have a 4th workshop that is going to combine that expense side, the revenue side, plus it will have the answers to several questions from workshop number 2 on the expenses for more detail. That will be included in that presentation when we combine them all on Monday, including detail on the memberships and sponsorships that was requested. All of that will be put together for our Monday combined overall budget and follow-up workshop. So back to today, where we're focusing, like I said, on the sales assumptions and the revenues, the revenue side of the equation. And I'm going to pass it over to our incredibly great CFO here and Executive Manager of Finance and her team, Margaret Moja. Margaret, would you lead us in this presentation today?
Absolutely. General Manager, if we could, I'd like to make a statement before we get started.
Go ahead, absolutely.
So today we're looking at the revenue side of the budget. And I understand that this is the first year I've been going through the budget process, etc. But I am a little bit at a loss because the revenue budget has implicit assumptions in it in terms of the expenditures that the districts needs to incur, and so the revenues that are required are basically based on what those expenditures are. At the last budget workshop, when we did look at the expenditure side of the equation, I don't think that we reached any consensus, and I know that I had expected to get an awful lot of information, none of which has been forthcoming to date. So with that, I do think that there is information or material in the presentation that's being made today in terms of the revenue that is predicated, I think, on the expenses that are not necessarily set in stone yet. And I think we're putting the cart before the horse, and maybe all that gets resolved on Monday. But I'm a little bit confused and disappointed in the organization of how we're being asked to review the budget. So with that, go ahead and make the presentation.
Thank you. I'd like to address just a couple of those things. Like I said at the outset, all of the questions that were raised for additional information is being presented on Monday. We did want to go through today to see if there's any other information that was needed. Today, we'll largely be talking about what the met rates are and what their changes are to go through that. So that's what Meta set those rates are, which is a big part of this revenue stream. That really doesn't change, but we'll discuss that. Margaret, did you want to add anything to that?
Only to say that, I think that because the budget is made up of multiple components, and to have a full understanding of it, we want to hone in on certain areas for that's there. Again, none of these workshops are here to take an action. They're just to inform and educate, if you will, what the assumptions are. Then, as Patrick mentioned, we will share that information sort of collectively together on Monday. In years past, of course, to your point, we have had just a single workshop where we tried to incorporate all of those decisions, but I think that the level of detail that has been requested by the board today has given us an opportunity to really dive into some more of the specifics so that we can then make sure that we are hearing your comments and concerns and able to address them. So we do anticipate, again, bringing it all together on Monday, but I'm happy to sort of address some of those sort of what does that impact mean should you have any of those questions as I present today.
And I think that the most important thing here today is that we are not being asked to make a decision. We are
No, you're not.
To receive information, and we can ask for and receive information all the way up to the day we vote on the budget. So nothing is concrete yet, and so every director is free and open to ask and get whatever information you need to make your decision. So and remember, we've been doing this for a while, so I think it should be clear to all of us that we are not under pressure to make a decision today. Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you, President Williams.
All right. With that, I will go ahead, and as Patrick has already shared with you, and I'll just bring it up on the screen here. So again, page 2 of the PowerPoint presentation. Again, we've had a series of workshops again to inform and engage our board and our constituents in our service area what it is that is the process here for the fiscal year 21-22 budget. Again, this is there's no decisions being made today. We will be taking this information from you today, incorporating what we can into the 4th workshop on Monday. And then we will be meeting with our customers on April 28th to also share sort of the culmination of all the discussions that we've had here so that they have a good understanding as well. We still do have a target date of May 24th, which is the regular board meeting in May, to consider the adoption of the budget and the rates and charges. But as President Williams has shared, we will continue to provide information so that the board is well informed and to take a position at that time.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sure, please.
Of course.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, Margaret. I do have a question on here because, I mean, is workshop number 4 the last workshop that we're expecting to do?
So as we've laid it out, but again, after today's meeting or even on Monday's meeting, if the board would like to have some additional workshops, we again are happy to provide that information for you. So okay. At this time, these are the scheduled ones, and we can.
Well, I just anticipate there's no way when we haven't got the information that was requested the last one, and we're going to supposedly get it Monday, that's going to be the final workshop. I also thought that we were going to talk about some of the issues with memberships at the Finance and Administration Committee. That's what I thought was said, but maybe I'm wrong.
And if I
go
could
ahead.
clarify that for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the intent of that was that we were hoping to have the fourth workshop, and sort of not back to back, but that the fourth workshop would have been later and after the F&A committee, knowing that that this fourth workshop, which was to bring back details, it was not going to include the memberships and sponsorships. Felt that the board would have said something like, I thought you're bringing back all the detail. We haven't done it. And so I made the decision and informed the general manager that I'd like to take that information at the workshop on the 19th so that we can then do this. And to your point about additional time, and we still have the April F&A committee. We also have the May F&A committee before the board can do that. And again, if the board chooses to have additional workshops, we can certainly work with the board to schedule those additional workshops to address those questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, I'm not sure what, maybe it's just scheduling, but why we got rushed, if you will, to have this meeting on Monday. But even now, we don't have an agenda. So when's that agenda going to be posted? Over the weekend, or when are we going to get copies of that? Just so I know. It's already 1 o'clock on a Friday.
Let me answer that, Margaret. So the schedule is very compressed, and I think it was based around availability of board members to get all board members to all the various meetings, but especially to these budget workshops. So we wanted to get any input that the board may have today and incorporate that into Monday's presentation, and hopefully get it out tonight or tomorrow at the very latest.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna make a comment. Look, I'm not here to force staff to work over the weekends to do these things. I just want people to understand that. Unfortunately, that's the way that it looks like it's working out. So my apologies to staff that you're having to work on Friday nights and Saturdays or whatever to do this. And you know, even if a courier is gonna have to come to my house over the weekend, I mean, that's ridiculous. But one last thing, I'm not sure why we're looking at trying to get this approved at the May board meeting. Don't we normally do this for June typically, or we have till June, right?
So if I could speak to that. So in years past, we've actually have taken the adoption of the rates and charges, including the standby charge, to the April board meeting. May, we would normally adopt the budget. Last year, we did have a prolonged schedule because we started a little bit later because of sort of the onset of the pandemic and trying to understand what that impact was, especially because, as you'll see today, that a fair amount of our a fair amount of our revenues is dependent upon water sales. And we weren't quite certain what was the impact, especially to our refineries and to our recycled water sales. And so, so we had a prolonged schedule last year, or I should say a process that started a little bit later than normal, and we did. The board did wanted additional time, and so we did take the information up at the June 28th, I think, board meeting. So yes, we do have to try to get it done by July 1. So we do have additional time to be able to do that. I would also say to some consideration is that in this particular time frame as well, not only are we working on the budget, but we're also working on our financing transaction, trying to, as close as we can, trying to follow the budget into the POS, our preliminary official statement. We want them to be as similar as possible. So if things are changing, then we want to make sure that we're aware of it. We are scheduled to bring, just to give you an update on that, we are scheduled to bring the financing document to the May board meeting with a June pricing. And so that's what we're hoping to sort of schedule. And so that's, we're working sort of in concert of financing transaction and, the budget at the same time. So a busy time, but trying to sort of coordinate all of those efforts together.
I understand. And thank you, Margaret. again, it just seems like last year, and I know we did prolong it longer. There was COVID. We did have more workshops than we normally have, which I definitely agree with. But there was no rush, it seemed, to get it done in May. Obviously, I think this is why it behooves us to probably start our budget process earlier instead of doing what we're trying to do now and cram everything. But these are just my comments. We'll see how it goes, but I think we're going to need some more discussions with future workshops. So thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just ask one last more or make one more point. So in past years, again, we would take one workshop in March, adopt rates in April, adopt budget in May. And so over the last couple years, that schedule has changed, and we are adapting to it. I'm adapting to it to address the additional concerns that the board has raised and to make sure that the good information is out there. Again, I'm proud of the work that we have done here to try to make sure that we are addressing the concerns of there, but also maintaining not only the financial security of the district for this year, but for years to come.
Right. Oh, no, Margaret, I am 100% with you. I think if we were to all look back and say, it's kind of amazing that we just would do one board workshop and that was it. That, I mean, in retrospect, I don't know if that would have been enough, but you know.
Yeah, I'm aware of what they do in cities and other special districts. It's one and done as well. So what we were doing in the past is no different than what I've seen and heard of my colleagues in other places. But, you know, again, I'm here to make sure that you have the information that's there. I'm comfortable with what I'm presenting to you today to make sure that it addresses the needs, as we mentioned, about ensuring that we meet those financial metrics that we talked about back in February, but also to make sure that the information that I'm presenting and hope to present as it relates to our upcoming financing transaction are sort of aligned to what's in the budget. So that is, you know, why I still show a May 24th meeting, because again, that's the kind of the information that I'm sharing there at the board into my preliminary official statement.
Good. Well, thank you very much. And I'm just going to say again, I really I'm sorry if staff is having to work overtime and crazy weird hours to get this accomplished. That's not what I personally was asking for, but you know, that's how it gets dealt with. So anyway, I thank you so much. Thank you, Margaret.
And I will just comment that, you know, again, I've been doing this a long time. I understand where it is. It is important for me to get this information right. I am happy to put in what is appropriate for us to do so that we can get the right information to you. You know, if it means, again, I'm hoping to get a May approval by the board for this so that we can continue to move forward and see those successes, if you will, in a successful bond transaction in June. So.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Just rest assured, directors, that we will not vote on the budget until the board is ready for that vote. Okay? So if it takes a little longer to get it done, we'll take the time to get it done. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, Margaret, before you move forward there, just one other thing that's in the mix right now, directors, is the standby charge situation. I don't want to go into it right now, but there's continuing developments on that front that we're trying to deal with. As we get more information from the judge and the court and new deadlines, and we'll be talking to you about that at the next closed session. And you had an email there from General Counsel. There's a lot of work happening on that front too that impacts a little bit our revenues, could impact our revenue situation. So Margaret, thanks again. Please continue.
All right. So for today's agenda, it's to give you an overview again of our revenue sources. And then from there, we will go into a little bit more detail. Again, what are the assumptions behind our imported water sales and rates, our imported water fixed revenues, our recycled water sales and rates, talk about a little bit of our other revenues that we have, and then to show you what that 5-year financial forecast is for our revenues.
Excuse me, Mark. So
Yes.
just back to, I think, an earlier point, the proposed budget and the revenues are predicated on, that you're going to be presented today, are predicated on what?
So It's predicated on, yes, the expenses that we shared at workshop number 2. So based off of the water sales information, the debt information, as well as the program expenditures, including I will say the capital expenditures, it does take those into consideration. Yes, there are questions out there. We're hoping that we address those concerns for you and be able to move forward with those programmatic expenditures. But that is the basis for how we've determined the revenues for here. Now, some of them are fixed in nature or based off a per agreement or sort of a historic trend. But we are looking at those expenses as sort of the offset. I will say that that the revenues that you see here, the 223.8 for the fiscal year 21-22, again, I'm on page 5 of the presentation, is slightly lower than what we were showing in the expenses. And when I did take a look at sort of what the revenues and the expense equations were, and hearing some of the concerns by the board, did lower the rates that were originally assumed when we did that. So the net effect of that, and you'll see that coming forth in workshop number 4, that it did basically lower, if you will, the amount of money that we would be putting aside into our designated funds balance. Still giving enough money to be able to pay for those PAYGO funds. However, I did, like I said, lower the rate assumption so that we can have, I think, a good consideration for today.
Excuse me. Your slide number 5 is packet page number 9.
Thank you. I don't have a packet in front of me, so I apologize. Thank you.
All right.
Back to one thing you did say, Margaret. You're right about that the revenues are based on a little bit less money than the expenditures that were brought to us at the previous workshop. But the difference is only $1.7 million. And in the previous expenditures, which a lot of questions were asked, and as you've mentioned earlier, it was not approved and it's going to be brought back to us. I had anticipated that the reduction, it would be quite a bit more. We had a very expensive CIP that I don't think there was agreement to. It may eventually get approved, but that was not agreed to. And other items that are based in or included in those expenditures are still open-ended items. So the revenues that presentation we see today, I'm interested in seeing what it's based on, but again, I want to just reiterate that the issue of the expenditures remains a big topic, and to go over something that Director Houston said, there's no way that on Monday we're going to approve, or that you're going to be able to present us information that addresses all the questions that were raised at the previous meeting and put together a final budget to then bring back to the board for adoption in May.
Again, if I could.
Mark, let me take this here. So this budget process, which has gone from a one workshop to these multiple workshops, that's exactly what we're doing, Director Alves. We're stepping through this very, very slowly. No decision was made on the revenues that were presented on, that were just presented for information and discussion back on March 24th. And the same today. What's the big assumptions here though? The assumptions are on how much imported water we're going to sell and how much recycled water we're going to sell and what we're going to get from the revenue from the standby charge. And there are other fixed payments in there. That's what we're discussing. We're not setting any rates today, and we're not setting them Monday. It's going to be a discussion, and if we need to have another board workshop, which it looks like we will, then we'll schedule that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Right,
Margaret.
and I was just going to comment again, all we're trying to do is inform and engage you as to what are the assumptions behind here. And as the board hears all that information and takes that information in and provides that feedback on where they want to see certain things, we can incorporate those items and present you sort of then a final consideration. But again, as staff, we are here to present you what we believe as being the appropriate expenditures, the appropriate rates and charges to meet the mission of the district and to meet those strategic goals that we set out for.
Yes.
All right, with that said, I will then turn our attention to, again, page 9 of your packet. Thank you, Director Williams. And it shows here the proposed revenues. Again, you can see that the largest portion of our revenues is our imported water, followed by our recycled water sales. Those particular revenue sources are highly driven by the water sales assumptions. So the water sales assumptions that we have shared with you back at the workshop number 2, again, as the basis for what those expenditures are the same that you see here today. And we'll go in a little bit more detail, again, as to sort of what, the trends, if you will, in those particular areas. Followed by that, we have some fixed revenues that you see there, standby, largely fixed, although as Patrick has mentioned, with the discussion going on with the standby charge, you do see a decrease there based off of what that information is on the settlement agreement. Fixed capital payments, just to remind you that, and again, we'll go into more detail on it, that those particular ones happen to be those agreements that we have with our refineries and what we anticipate seeing in the fiscal year relating to those capital payments. Fixed service charge is a relatively new rate to us. We are in, if you will, this will be our 4th year of that particular rate. And you'll see that that particular rate is declining. And we'll go into the reason for that. But again, it's essentially that it's based off of 2 programmatic budgets. That's how we sort of ascertain how much are we going to collect on a fixed basis. And because those 2 budgets have declined, you see the respective decline in our fixed service charge. And then the final items that you see there, the water use efficiency and grants and interest is about a $1.5 million. And again, with the board's recent decision back in March regarding the desalter and its interest in divesting from it, we are showing 0 sales for next year. And again, that I understand those conversations are ongoing. So with that, I will move forward to just giving you a little bit of background again as it relates to the various rates and charges components. Again, these components do represent the majority of our revenue. So I do want to take some time to make sure that we have a full understanding of what it is that we are in control of and what we are passing through as to our customers from Metropolitan Water District. So at the top portion of the slide, and again, I'm on page 6 of the presentation, which is page, my apologies, page 10 in your board packet. It is the first side is the West Basin imported Tier 1 commodity rate. Now that commodity rate is a single rate that our customers see. However, that single rate is made up of 3 important components. So that is the first thing. The bottom half of the page, it represents 2 fixed charges. One of them is from West Basin. The other one is a pass-through from Metropolitan Water District. So I want to just first identify that we have a variable component and then we have some fixed charges. The second thing I wanted to point out, which is the middle column, is how is those particular rates and charges determined? So for our variable rate component, it is on a per acre foot basis. So for every acre foot that we have, you will see a charge associated with that. But for our fixed charges, they are based off of different factors. For our West Basin factor, you see that it's an annual calculation based on a 3-year historic sales. And for the Metropolitan capacity charge, that is an annual calculation based on the peaking cubic feet per second flow rate. And so information we receive from Metropolitan Water District, it's the highest of the 3 peaks, if you will, during the last 3 calendar years. And then we take that highest amount and we apply the rate to it. The last component as it relates to our rates and charges is when do those changes are made. For West Basin, we make them on a fiscal year basis. We are a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year, and so our rates change on a fiscal year basis. So again, we're hoping to make decisions by the end of the fiscal year so that they would then apply by July 1. However, for the Metropolitan Water District rates and charges, those particular items are done on a calendar year basis. And so we know that information from Metropolitan, and we'll go into that a little bit because they've already made a decision about their 22 calendar rates and charges. And so those have been incorporated into this particular presentation today. So with that, I'll just pause to see if there are any questions relating just how the various components and when they happen and what they're based on, to see if there's any questions here before I go into the specifics.
Directors, questions? Seeing none, Margaret.
All right. Very good, very good. Well, let me first then go on to our historic imported water sales. It was asked at the workshop number 2, could you tell us a little bit about what our historic trends have been so we can understand what the assumptions are for fiscal year 21-22? So as you see here, we're showing our imported water sales. We have imported water sales to the dark blue is our retail sales. So that's where we see the bulk, if you will, of our sales coming from our retail customers, followed by the sales to the barrier. We have the West Coast barrier and the Dominguez Gap barrier. So the medium blue that you see there is the Dominguez Gap barrier, and then the West Coast barrier is in the lightest blue. Now, those informations for our barrier sales is based off of input that we do receive from WRD. WRD does, take a look at what is, what they anticipate doing. But ultimately, in the end, I do understand that it is the county that will make decisions about how to manage that groundwater basin. And so we do our level best to understand what they are assuming for the budget. And so for fiscal year 21-22, to the far right column, you'll see that the West Coast barrier is at 2,000 acre feet. The Dominguez barrier is at 3,000 acre feet, and retail is 103,000 acre feet. I will share with you that the retail sales of 103,000 acre feet is similar to the budget that we have for this year. And so we are trending right around budget, and you'll see more information on that, not at next week's F&A, but certainly at our May when we share out the budget versus actual. That would be for the first 3 quarters of the year. And for the Dominguez Gap and, like I said, the West Coast barrier, that we receive input from the WRD as it relates to them on that. So before I again move on, this is the information I have on the water sales. Again, similar information that we shared with you on workshop number 2. And if not, I will move forward to go into the details of the rate side of the equation.
Directors, questions?
So can you go back on the barrier sales? So this is imported water sales, which, I again raise an objection that we should not be using imported water at the barriers. It should be 100% recycled water. And again, just explain to me why we're proposing for next year 2,000 acre feet of imported water sales and not 100% recycled water.
Sure. And again, this is feedback that we received from staff over at WRD. WRD takes a look at what they anticipate being the overall injection into the barrier. And with that injection into the barrier, that they then also make a determination as to how much is going to be from recycled versus how much has been imported. I know there was a discussion at E&O on Wednesday as to the points that you just made there. And again, it's my understanding that we are ready to deliver 100% of what they request. It's just that right now that 100% has a certain component that is going to be from imported water sales.
And if I may add to that, Margaret, Uzi, I see you on the line here. So Director Alvarez's question is, why isn't this 100% recycled water, and why is there any imported water at all, which is being dictated not by us? It's a blending request or requirement. Can you please articulate why it is that not in our control, why they're asking for any imported water. And I'm talking about outside of upsets or wells being done, just in the normal operation. Thank you, Uzi.
Sure. Since my time here at West Basin, always in water quality and compliance, working with WRD, the county, and regulators for the barrier for IPR, and even looking forward at DPR, that has always been an understanding, and the county, not WRD, has been quite articulate that they will always want to trickle in, those were their words at the time, and still, potable water, because they have a potable water line. They don't want it to freeze up. They don't have the ability. They work Monday through Thursday. So they always have a little bit of water going through, and their intent is to always have a small amount of potable water so that they can adjust right away and not have a system seize up. That is what they have always told us. They've stuck to that since the day I've been here. And so I think while their intent is to go to, let's say, 99%, operationally, they would like to always see a little bit of potable water coming through that meter and through those lines.
So thank you. So it's the really the driver here is the LA County Public Works Department. And back in the day, Desi, like I mentioned the other, 1995, it was a 50-50 split. So there was never this issue that they needed some water going through from potable. And then years later, we went to 75% recycled, 25%. But after 100%, which I wasn't here during that time, but they want this water to continue to run at a certain amount. And Uzi, it's not our option to turn it off, right? They immediately want it on if you turn it off.
We do not control it. And when we moved from 75% to 100%, the permit required an expert panel to get together. And there was some agreement that having the ability to, quote, immediately turn on imported, I know that's, we need to use that word differently, imported water right away was also important according to the regulators. So I think that's why there's always been an understanding that the county at any time could control that mechanism. We do not have control of that imported water connection. We only control our recycled water connection, and they actually will call us and say, turn it down or turn it up.
Okay.
We can go on. Go ahead.
Desi, does that answer your question? Because it keeps coming up and it seems like we're not connecting here. That we're supplying all the recycled water that if it was up to us, we'd give them 100%, and we're ready, willing, and able to do that. But there are certain things, including the control of the actual water going in on the imported side and what the regulator requirement is here, that is out of our control. So we try to give them 100% that they'll take of recycled water. And they want this small amount of imported water for the reasons just very clearly articulated by Uzi. Thank you. Margaret?
I think the question has been asked and the question has been answered. So let's move on.
Can I ask another question really quickly, please?
Sure.
If you go back to that slide, I do see the trend, obviously, that imported water is slowly going down on sales in West Basin, but offhand, what is the percentage of imported water we're at now? You know, when we do our pie chart, our portfolio, what are we approximately down to, ballpark?
Director Houston, just to clarify, percentage of the total?
Yeah, because we always talk about we're at what, 60% of our supplies imported or 58%. What are we approximately now or trending to?
I don't know in that later pie chart, we have that, Margaret, but basically the total portfolio is 103,000 of imported water for our retail customers, like it says here, and then the 5,000 for the two barriers. Then about 35,000 acre feet for recycled water, and then groundwater.
Just would like the percentage. What, you know, because we used to be at
what?
what?
You didn't have to finish my answer, but if you want to interrupt me, that's okay.
I would like to ask a question.
I would like to answer your question.
Okay, go ahead. Hang on there, folks.
Mr. General Manager, I'm just asking a question.
And I'm trying to answer your question, sir.
Just a minute. Hang on there. Just a minute. Ask your question, Director.
I am trying to ask my question.
Ask your question.
So we were at like what, 80% imported water, then we were around 66%. And I'm trying to find out, what are we at approximately now? Is it 58%? Is it 60? Can anyone just give me the ballpark?
I can do that.
Yeah? Okay,
I can-
what is that?
Right now, we're showing at 67%.
67, I thought it was less. Am I wrong?
Well, you asked me, I'm telling you the graph that I'm reading, and this is the most recent one that I got.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. We'll
right,
check into
well-
that and confirm that.
That's not a make or break, so you check, give him the current number exactly when you can.
Okay, just, I thought it would be an easy one, but thank you. Thank you very
There's
much.
an easy one, I just gave it to you.
Unbelievable.
All right, please carry
Margaret?
on.
All right, let's move on to then the components of the rates. So as it's stated here, these are proposed rates. We are showing you what is made up of the three components that makes up the West Basin Tier 1 commodity rate. So today, we are billing to our customers at a rate of $1,441 per acre foot for imported water. Again, those are made up of three components. Those components are, again, Metropolitan Water District as Tier 1 rate, $1,104, Metropolitan's Readiness to Serve charge. We will go into that in a moment. That is actually a fixed charge to us, which we convert to as a per acre foot basis. And the last component, which is, I'll say, one of two West Basin levers, which is our reliability service charge. So again, the $1,441 is the rate today. What we are proposing is that the rate for the reliability service charge will go up to $245 effective July 1, 2021. And then in January 1st, 2022, then the rate will go up to $1,488, and that is because we are passing through the already approved Metropolitan Tier 1 rate. So overall, you can see that MET's rate is going up by $39. RTS is remaining flat, and that our reliability service charge is going up $8. So a total of $47 is going up on the Tier 1 rate when you take a look at different times of the year. So a year from now, we would be seeing effectively a $47 rate increase, or 3.3%. Just a little bit of a sort of a heads up and a tease, if you will. The $8 that you see there on the reliability service charge, when we get to the fixed component for the district, which is, again, this new component that we introduced a few years ago, effectively, even though it's a fixed charge, if you were to convert that on a per acre foot basis, we're going down $8. So the reality is we're going up in one area, we're going down in the other area, but it's a net effect zero to the district. And so just wanted to make sure that you are aware of that. And so again,
Bring that one again, please. I kind of not
sure,
quite sure.
absolutely. It's a lot to take in. So let's go through it. So again, the $39 is again, we historically have passed through those MET's rate increases. That rate, and we'll go into that in the next slide, shows that it's going up to $1,143. So that's the $39 rate increase. Then moving on to the reliability service charge, which is the other component that's going up, you see an $8 rate increase on the reliability service charge. That $8 there is going up on the per acre foot basis. But again, we'll go forward a few slides, and I just wanted to share with you, just to give you a heads up and a tease, if you will, is that while you're seeing an increase on this side, you're also actually seeing a decline, if you will, on your fixed service charge. And again, it's a fixed service charge, but we tried to convert it to a per acre foot basis so that you can kind of see what that impact is. And that is actually going down $8. So we're going up $848,000 on the variable side, but we're going down actually about $886,000 on the fixed side. So the net effect to our customers is that it's a zero rate increase to our customers.
Margaret, President Williams, can I comment on something here?
Of course.
All right, thank you. Just just for a little bit of context on these rates set by Metropolitan. So Metropolitan has a sets their budget usually in April for a 2-year time frame. Even though they're doing it on a fiscal year basis, the actual rates go into effect on a calendar year basis the following year. And the reason I mention that, if they adopt rates, which they did a couple of years ago, they set them for 21 and I believe 22, correct, Margaret? Or 20 and 21.
Yes.
And then
It's calendar year 21 and calendar year 22.
correct. And so that means that they end up straddling our fiscal year. So we have 6 months of one of the rate increases that was set January 1, which will cover the entire calendar year. We pick up half of it on either side, and then in the ensuing year, the new rate in 2022 kicks in on January 1. So it's a little bit convoluted, but that's what's attempted. Well, it's shown clearly here, but it's a little hard to follow sometimes, trying to track their particular budget and rate setting structure and how it pertains. It's offset from ours, and it's on a 2-year basis, calendar basis, even though it's set in a fiscal year in April. Okay. Thank you, President Williams. Margaret?
Yes. So as Patrick was just sharing here, this provides a little more context as it relates to just the Metropolitan Tier 1 rate. So again, on April 14th of 2020, they did approve the calendar rate increases for their rates and charges. And so in this particular case, the Tier 1 rate changes on January 1. And what the rate was and is, I should say, today is $1,104 and is going up to $1,143. So that is the first component of the West Basin rate. So let's move on to the second component. And then again, let me get to the right page, page 15 in your board packet, slide 11 on your PowerPoint. It is the Metropolitan Readiness to Serve charge. Now, this particular charge is a fixed charge to West Basin and to all of its member agencies. So again, it's an annual fixed charge based on a calendar year basis. And each member agency pays its proportionate share based on a 10-year rolling average of imported water sales. For West Basin, we are one of 2 agencies that made a decision years ago that says we are going to convert that fixed charge to us, and we're going to collect, rather than having Metropolitan collected on our behalf, we said we will collect it on our own rates and charges. And the way we have done that is by converting that fixed charge to a per acre foot basis. And then we add that component to our West Basin Tier 1 imported water commodity rate. So a little bit more detail on that is on the next slide. And again, this gets into really the details of what we see from Metropolitan Water District and how it pertains to us. So let's orient ourselves on this particular page. So first you have the Metropolitan calendar year collection. So in their cost of service study, they're determining that they need $130 million in calendar year 2021 to pay for this readiness to serve. In calendar year 2022, they said we needed that number to be 140 million. So we know that is their budget they're dealing with, and that's how they're going to collect it from its 26 member agencies. The next line that you see there is our allocated portion here. Now this can change from year to year. However, when we have looked at what those rates are that was given by Metropolitan Water District, that our percentage has remained unchanged from calendar year 21 to calendar year 22. So again, our 10-year rolling average, where we are to the total customers, our total member agency sales, if you will, we are 7.82%. So if you take that $130 million times that 7.82, that will tell you what our annual calculation is. But again, as I mentioned to you, we are on a fiscal year basis. So we need now to split that number between 6 months of the year. So the latter half of 2021, what is that number? So you take that number, you divide it by 2, or you take the 130, multiply it by 7.82, divide that by 2, you get to 5,083,000. Likewise, we would do the same for calendar year 22. You would take that 140 million, times it by 7.82, split that in half, then we would say that the next portion is there. is $5,474,000. So while you can see the total is $10,557,000 that we will be needing to pay in fiscal year 21-22. You can see that the component for the RTS is actually increasing for West Basin. However, based off of what we have shared with you as far as what our total collections should be in the fiscal year basis, again, thinking West Basin, fiscal year basis, $10,557,000, and what we assume our water sales to be, and again, we do this with the retail and the Dominguez Gap, it does not include the West Coast barrier. It is 106,000 acre feet. We divide that and you can see that equates to $100 per acre foot. So you can see that the current rate is 100 and we're saying going forward in this case, 2022 for us, we would then see that rate to be $100. So no change to us. So we are seeing an increase in our component, but our component to our customers is not changing. So I'll pause there because that's a lot of information to see if there's any questions relating to the RTS. But again, this gives you into the specifics, down to the details of how we get the information to Metropolitan and how we turn it back into what does it mean to our customers.
Questions?
All right, hearing none, then let me then go on to the next and final component of the West Basin imported water commodity rate. So as I mentioned, this is one of our two, I apologize, thank you, page 17 of your packet.
Thank you.
So page 17 of your packet, page 13 on the slides. And it shows you that this reliability service charge is one of two components that West Basin can increase on our imported water customers. This again represents a charge to cover the cost of its program and services. So historically, West Basin has always collected all of its revenues, if you will, for its imported water on a variable basis. A few years ago, the board made a prudent decision to carve out a portion and says we're going to do that on the fixed service charge. And so while we were making that transition of bringing over sort of a fixed charge component to us, we did keep that rate flat. So the last time you saw an increase on this rate was in fiscal year 17-18. We then kept it flat during the 3 years that we implemented the change onto the onto the fixed service charge. And now what you see here is an $8 increase here on the reliability service charge. So again, Metropolitan going up $39, RTS component staying flat, and the variable portion for West Basin is going up $8. And again, if you look to the history here, you can see we've had a $14 increase from 16-17 to 17-18. And then you can see even back from 15-16 to 16-17, you can see that it was a $29 increase. So again, a very prudent decision by this board to sort of manage itself to get to a fixed component, but also something that we feel comfortable with when presenting these numbers today.
Questions?
Well, I have a question, President Williams. What happens if we don't increase it to 245 and leave it at 237?
Certainly, I mean, so there's one of two ways that it happens. As you mentioned, there are expenses that we would need to cut. So this again, that $8 increase times, if you will, the 106,000 acre feet that's there, that equates to about $848,000. So either need to cut $848,000 to your budget, or you would have an impact to your debt service coverage.
Okay.
All right, let's move on then to the other side of the equation for the imported water charges, and that is the fixed revenues. As I shared with you previously, there are two charges here, and I will go through. The first one is the Metropolitan capacity charge.
So what page are you on now?
Absolutely, page 19.
Thank you.
So as this particular slide shows, this is another pass-through charge from Metropolitan, and is in cubic feet per second, and it's based on the peak usage from West Basin customers. So we do get a fair amount of data that we receive from Metropolitan Water District. And what we do is we look to that information and we see when did West Basin peak during this particular year. And then it's compared to the 2 other previous years. So again, this is on a calendar year basis. So we're looking at fiscal year 18, 19, and 20. We're looking at what is the peak for West Basin. And as you can see there, and looking to the column where it says West Basin paid, this is what we pay. And this is sort of the expense side of it, but I wanted just to kind of share this all together. You can see that our peak has remained, the peak that we had at 211.8 is the highest peak during those 3 years. Now you will see that Metropolitan Water District has increased its rate from 10,700 to 12,200 per CFS. Again, this is an approved rate based off of April 14th, 2020. So we know what that rate increase is. So based off of that peak, and then based off of what those rates are, you can see that the amount of cost to West Basin will be $2,425,110. Again, because Metropolitan changes on a calendar year basis, we change on a fiscal year basis. That's why you're seeing 6 months at one rate and 6 months at another rate. However, let's move to the right side of the page here, and you see the water purveyor paid. Now, this one here is interesting because what we do here is we look at not when West Basin peaked and let's charge that over to our customers, but when do our individual customers peak? So they might peak at a different time than the cumulative of when West Basin peaks. But when we add up all the individual peaks of our customer, you can see that that peak is higher than what our individual West Basin, or our collective, I should say, West Basin is. So for the first half of the year for calendar year 2021, you can see that it's 253 per CFS. Going down to then 2022, what we would see there is using then that 3-year peak, you can see that that has gone up slightly to 255.5. So we see that, again, we're peaking at 211, they're peaking around 253, 255. Again, we look at what the rates are for our customers. And what we do is because we see that our peak is different than what our individual customers are peaking and that this is a pass-through, we do provide that benefit back to our customer. We are not trying to make a dollar here, to make money on this. What we're trying to do is trying to match that revenues and expenses that you see there. So we are being charged $10,700 in that first half of the year, and again, it's been approved by the board already. This here shows that in July 2021, we're showing that rate is $9,050. That is what currently the customers are paying. But for the second half of the year, you can see that what we're suggesting is that while Met is charging us $12,200, we are able to then give them a rate of $10,025. Again, trying just to match up as close as we can. We did pretty close, $400 difference or so, to match up, if you will, between the revenues and expenses. So again, truly a pass-through. So that is one of the components of our fixed charges. And before I move on from this one, I wanted to also just take a pause and see if there are any questions.
So,
Go ahead.
President Williams, I do have a question. I think I understand this. So basically, you're just prorating the 10,000 set for the July 1, 2021 time period. You're prorating the metropolitan rate, which is 10,700, by the ratio of the peaking charge that we peak at, West Basin peaks at, which is 211.8 CFS, versus the cumulative peaking charge for our customers, which is 253.
Correct.
So it's 10,700 times whatever that ratio is.
Right. And again, it's again, we're trying to overall, so again, we know that we have 6 months on one rate and we have 6 months at another rate. We know that we're peaking at different times. So again, it's just a mathematical equation to try to get them to be as near break even as possible.
And Margaret, there's no markup. This is a straight pass through.
Right. Again, I mean, I guess, if we could pass, I suppose I could say, board, Metropolitan is charging us $10,700, so go ahead and charge your customers $10,700. If we were doing that, we would be making too much money here. And again, we're saying that this is a pass-through charge, and we're not trying to do that. So.
Very good.
All right, then let's go to the next slide, which is on the West Basin fixed service charge. Again, as I mentioned, this is the other lever, if you will, that West Basin has as it relates to its imported water sales. So again, as I mentioned, in fiscal year 18-19, the board made the decision to implement a fixed service charge, and we wanted to do that over a 3-year period, not to have an immediate rate shock, if you will, to our customers, but something that we would ease in over a period of time. And while we were doing that, as you saw previously, that the reliability service charge did remain unchanged during that period of time. Again, we had to make a determination of how we were going to collect this fixed service charge. Again, looking at the various models that are out there and working with our rate consultant at the time, they shared, different models. We shared it with the board. They've agreed to this proportionate share of the 3-year rolling average of historic water purchases. So similar to how Metropolitan does with its, RTS, but they do it over a 10-year period. We're trying to do it over a 3-year period of time. The other component that you see here is how much are we trying to collect? So we are saying that we thought rather than come up with some arbitrary, 10%, 20% fixed charge, we said, let's try to base it off of some program budgets. So we looked to a couple of program budgets there. You can see one is the public information and education budget and the water policy budget. It doesn't mean that the revenue is dedicated specifically to this, because all revenues go to pay for our costs. It's just the basis in which we're able to do them. So the fixed charge is $7,459,131 today in fiscal year 2021. And what we're saying is, and that is the sum of those two particular budgets. And in fiscal year 21-22, based off of the proposed budgets that we shared with you in workshop number 2, you can see that that is going down to $6,572,327. So we're seeing a decline in that area. And what I was sharing with you earlier, if you look to what that number is divided by the number of acre feet, you can see that effectively it was a $70 rate, if you will. If we didn't do the fixed service charge, this is perhaps what we would have seen over that period of time. And you can see that it's going down to 62. So effectively, that's why I was saying $8 up on the variable side, $8 down on the fixed side. So again, assuming that our budget is appropriately set, and again, we're trending very well close to that. I think we're finally hit our mark. You can see that we are basically saying it's a 0 rate increase to our customers from a West Basin perspective. Again, this rate would go in effect on July 1st, 2021. And I have 2 more slides to share with you, and then maybe I can take some questions regarding this. So if we turn to page 21 of your packet, this here provides you a little bit more detail relating to how we get to that 3-year rolling average. So you can see here's the actual for 17-18, the actual acre feet for 18-19, and the actual acre feet for 19-20. And then we show what that 3-year average is. So you can see that 3-year average is 111,400 is what our 3-year average has been. And then you can see sort of how each individual customer, if you will, water provider to us, is into this thing. So a fair amount of that percentage increase, if you will, is going to, towards our Cal Water, is paying the biggest portion, if you will, of our fixed charge. But again, if it was on the variable side, you would have seen that as from an acre feet perspective, they would be paying this. So the one final slide as it relates to the fixed service charge is, and again, this is the proposed, is based off of the budgets and based off of what we see as being the acre feet there that you see there. This is what we would then say what our customers would pay. So while today, for instance, Cal American is paying $72,354 in the fiscal year, the current fiscal year that we're in, their rate would go up to $88,858. And that is because their proportionate share has gone up when compared to the rest of the customers. Overall, you can see certain people are going up and certain people are going down. But again, the overall to our customers is going down. So with that, I will take a pause and see if there are any questions here. Again, these rates are effective July 1, 2021. Again, proposed, let me clarify.
Directors. Okay, carry on, Margaret.
All right, let's move on then now to the other side of where we have some sales that are based off of our recycled water sales and the components that you see there. So let's go to page 24 of your packet, 20 on the PowerPoint. This here shows you what your water sales have been historically over the last period of time. So we're showing you here fiscal year 17-18, fiscal year 18-19, fiscal year 19-20. So those are your actual deliveries that you had to your refineries, your disinfected tertiary, so your irrigation customers, and then to the barrier. And then what we project those sales to be in fiscal year 2021, and then what our proposed sales are expected to be in 21-22. Again, the proposed sales that you see there in 21-22 are the same sales that we shared with you at workshop number 2 as the assumptions that we used to come up with that recycled water budget. So again, just to orient you on the information that you see here, in that dark purple is the barrier sales. You can see that kind of fluctuates all over the board, and I know that as you've heard earlier, this is dependent upon how the county requests that information. We also, in that sort of medium purple, show our disinfected tertiary sales. So that's that sort of middle bar there. And then the light bar or the light purple, you see the refineries. I've kind of grouped them all together here so that you can kind of see sort of where we're at. But down below, you can actually see what those specific acre feet are. So let's just talk about refineries for a moment. So while refineries are typically around 19,000 acre feet, you can see the impact that the pandemic did actually have, and it's still having a little bit of effect on our sales to our refineries. We were at 19, have been historically around 19. It did drop down to 17,000 in fiscal year 19-20. Again, pandemic hit around March, April, May, June. So, a good third of the year is, if you will, where the pandemic hit. And I think that's had that immediate impact that we were wondering about. We are seeing right about the same number of sales that's there. Hopefully, again, we, as things sort of return to the office and return to businesses, if you will, might see an uptick there. But as we projected these numbers show a relatively about the same as last year. However, we do anticipate that for fiscal year 21-22, that those sales will go back up to 19,000 acre feet. Now, still slightly below that is because we are hearing from our refineries that they are still feeling some effect of it, and they're still sort of ramping up towards it. But we do anticipate that you'll see that more clearly there. On our disinfected tertiary, you can see that we took a little bit of a conservative edge there just to make sure that the impact of the pandemic is there. But again, these are somewhat dependent upon rainfall, and so if the rainfall happens, we will see lower sales here because they don't need to water a median or a park or anything if nature is going to do it for them. And then finally to the barrier sales. You can see those numbers have kind of gone up and gone down. We anticipate 12,000 when we put this together. We'll continue to monitor that. Again, the news from the county could change that information. And I believe as already shared with you, I think also at workshop number 2, but probably also at E&O meetings, that they are doing some repair work on the number of wells. And in that conversation, while we were hearing from WRD where they anticipate sales or what they anticipated the injection to be for the barrier, in further up conversations with the county, they anticipated that sales or injections should be lower because of all that repair work. Now, we do anticipate that that repair work will be done in a year from now. And as a result of that, you will start to see that those sales will start to increase and be sort of, I'll say, at the more normal levels than what we've seen. So historically for the district, we have seen around between the combined of the imported and recycled around 15.5 over the last 10 years. Again, sort of fluctuating up and down depending upon how the barriers are being operated. And with that, I'll pause before I go on to the rate side of the equation to see if there are any further questions.
Margaret, question regarding the barriers, the West Coast barrier anyways. On that one, so you're showing 10,600 acre feet for recycled water, and you previously showed 2,000 acre feet for imported water. So total
Right.
about 12,600. That's based on the county's input to you or WRD's input to you?
So we initially received input from WRD, and then our operations team did some follow-up conversation. Well, actually, I think as they were hearing about this from the daily operations, they were hearing about the impact there and says, well, where do you anticipate it to be? It's my understanding that everybody budgets a little, they budget at sort of a higher number. We want to make sure that we're there. We're, again, ready and willing to be able to deliver as much recycled water that they can, but we are seeing that there could be some impact there. So yes, overall, to your point, 10,600 from recycled, 2,000 from potable or imported, for a total of 12,600.
And Margaret, let me add to that real quickly. So Director Alvarez, the work, this is really dictated by the county. The work on those wells, as Margaret mentioned, is just starting as we speak and is expected to wrap up in March of 2022. And I see Uzi's on the call here. So they gave a specific, they said, these wells are going to be completely out of commission for a whole year. And we are not, we're going to reduce the amount of water we need. And they also dictate on the potable side. So Uzi, clarify, make sure I'm saying the right thing there is what the county has dictated in this case.
Correct. The county is shutting their barrier down as they replace a number of wells, a state grant that we help them with, meeting with regulators. And because the barrier will be down even for imported sales, they came back to us and said they gave it to us in MGD that they estimated 12 to 13 MGD. And so we're just trying to balance those two numbers to have a realistic point of view.
That's 12 to 13 total, right?
Correct. That's what they're estimating right now based on their construction schedule.
So back to my question, it is based really on the county's input, not WRD's input.
It's more the county.
I guess if you look at the engineering survey report that WRD just approved, they got 16,000 going into the barrier.
Correct. And we did have a conversation understanding that with the county and WRD to understand sort of, where should we end up here for West Basin here? Again, I think that they're budgeting more, I want to say more conservatively, but they're showing a number higher than I think that the county then is going to be able to deliver. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on then to the rate side of the equation for the recycled water sales. Again, these are proposed recycled water rates. So again, with the sales that you see, the rates that you see here, I'm showing you two side-by-side columns. So first is the inside service area. So those are, again, those irrigation customers, and actually the Chevron nitrified refinery sales are actually on this tiered rate structure. So that's the inside service area. And so you can see the rate at the top highest tier is $12.55. My apologies, we're on page 25 on the board packet. And it's $12.55. And then you can see it's a tiered rate structure down. So it goes down $10 per block. And you can see that the first 0 to 25 is $12.55, 25 to 50 is $12.45, and so on. The rate that you see there on the proposed If you look at that rate there, that 1255 to the 1294, that rate there represents the $39 rate increase that you see on the imported water sales. That is the MET increase. The reason why we're showing sort of a match, if you will, to that particular thing is that we have historically tried to keep that sort of delta between the imported water sales to the recycled water sales to, again, encourage individuals to move towards recycled water sales. And so we're showing that $39 increase, again, to sort of reflect, if you will, the increase that you see there. Likewise, on the outside service area, you see that the rate is slightly higher to start with, and that is because they're outside of our service area within West Basin. At the time, we were seeing sort of a, if you will, a rate that they didn't have to pay for a certain component because of the standby charge. That's not true for those customers that are outside of our service area. And again, those customers are the City of Torrance and the City of Los Angeles through LADWP. Again, on a tier rate structure, those go from $12.97, again, dropping down $12.87. And again, the proposed rate is showing that increase, if you will, of $39 on that particular rate. So again, our recycled water side is sort of matching, if you will, what's happening on our imported water sales. So again, trying to pass through, if you will, that increase. Now we do have a number of other recycled water rates that we have, and those are all set by agreement. So as we shared with you most recently with the City of Torrance and the Torrance Refinery, what that particular rate was based off of a 3-year rolling average of actual unit cost. So that's how that particular agreement is structured. Likewise, the Chevron boiler feed is structured that way. And then the WRD has a much more complicated sort of component. There's a ramp up period, and then there's a comparison to sort of other rates that you see there. So again, just following what those agreements said. So if I can sort of conclude here as it relates to this rate, we are increasing the rates as the pass-throughs are to the that you see on the metropolitan side, and that the other ones are being set by agreement. So with that, that takes us to the end of. Actually, I have one more slide as it relates to our recycled water, and that is our.
That slide,
Oh, sure. Yep,
can you give us an example of who is outside the service area?
Yes, so as I mentioned, Los Angeles, so LADWP. So the sales that we have to LADWP for the west side, that they follow this sort of tiered structure, if you will. All sales, sorry, go ahead.
That just applies to City of Los Angeles. How about the City of Torrance?
And I was just going to say, also the City of Torrance. So again, we bill all of our sales, including to the refinery through the City of Torrance. So up until recently, all sales to Torrance Refinery were on this tiered rate structured. What changed recently was the fact that the agreement for the nitrified portion was expiring, and so we were negotiating with them, and the board just approved a much more beneficial agreement in which that it's looking to actual costs. It's not based off of some other factor. It's based off of what does it cost to produce that particular water. And in the case of, again, Torrance Refinery for the nitrified, those sales are based off of what the unit cost is, taking the average for the last 3 years and then using that as the rate. So for today, for instance, it's the 1,001 is what they're charging for the nitrified. Now, for the boiler feed, they still follow this tiered rate structure. And again, as that agreement comes to its term, and in 2023, we hope to then be able to move towards something different on that as well. But again, you know, that's what the plan is to move towards that going forward. So that it matches, if you will, the rate that's coming in for the on the commodity side is paying for those O&M costs, and that the capital component is a fixed charge or a fixed capital component that we would then receive from them.
Okay, so I have a request just so I can see what the rates changed has been. Can you provide us after this meeting the rates that were being paid by the refineries when it was based on the recycled water rates versus now on the cost of recovery rate based on the new agreement? Just we can see the deltas.
And what period of time are you looking for? Just the
Well,
last
you
year?
mentioned the Torrance refinery, and then I think earlier you mentioned that WRD has a different rate structure. It's a little more complicated. That's not covered in this.
Right, so you're just asking for this proposed fiscal year.
This proposed and then last year, so we can see the
Okay.
delta.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll do.
Director Alvarez, you want that for all the refineries, so not just Torrance refinery?
Right.
Got it. And WRD will give a breakdown of that.
The ones that were mentioned as being different than what this table covers.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Probably, I assume, although we're talking about commodity charges here, since we're doing that exercise, we should put in for the refineries the fixed component, which is separate, but it's all part of what they're paying for the entire water package. So
That would be
that way you'll have the total picture.
Yep, we can do that.
That information will be provided to all of the directors, correct?
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if we can get that to you by Monday, or we may be able to get it tonight, we'll see.
Can do. All right. The last thing I wanted to say about the local resources of the recycled water revenue that we receive is that we do have an incentive with Metropolitan Water District for their local resources program, or LRP. So again, this provides us an incentive of $250 per acre foot. It's based off of a 25-year agreement that started in June 2012, and it expires in June 2037. What this particular LRP applies to is sales to the NRG, so one of our sort of peaker plant refineries that does take a little bit of water from us, not much. Any sales above 12,555 to the West Coast barrier, and as we saw on a previous slide, we don't anticipate that we're going to have sales above 10,600, so we don't anticipate that we're going to receive any LRP for that, but if we happen to be in that position, we will certainly be getting that those acre feet there. And then finally, this particular LRP agreement did specify additionally that there are other sales along certain laterals, being the Mills, El Segundo, Normandy, and Redondo Beach, that if there are those particular customers from those particular laterals that are coming through, then those can apply to this particular LRP. And just as a bit of a history, again, we did have an initial sort of LRP agreement that did expire in March of 2020. And so again, that's where we were seeing the bulk, if you will, of our LRP revenue. It's significantly less, as you can see. No longer are we receiving over $6 million, $7 million. We're only expected to receive about 10,000 acre feet.
Before you go, Margaret, I do want to say have a question on this.
Please.
No, I guess it's more, well, two things. One, NRG. So you mean the power plant, right? I think you said refinery, but that's the power plant, right?
My apologies. Yes.
Right.
Okay. Over on the coast, and obviously it's a peaker plant, so it rarely runs, and so we're not sending much to them.
Right.
And I think you said it well. The big picture is we really don't hardly get anything at this point from Metropolitan on any sort of rebates, right?
At this time, right. Again, we have an agreement there that, they, and it's, also has a cap of the number of acre feet, and depending upon how you perform there, that cap may change. But again, you can see that I believe this is like 40 acre feet at $250 to $10,000. But I wanted just to point it out because I know that last year the conversation was we were seeing a big decline in our revenues because of the loss of the LRP. I just wanted to point out to you, we still have a little bit of LRP, just not very much.
Oh no, I think that's actually good that we all see that, we know that the public knows that. We are hardly getting any rebate or incentive or anything on programming right now from Metropolitan for the LRP program.
Right.
It's good to see that's very clear. And again, also, I guess we don't know what the future of LRP holds until Metropolitan decides. So
Correct, right.
I would just say, you know, again, it's a really good commentary for the public to understand that, you know, we really are not getting much incentive at this time at this district for the recycle water program. It's, you know, dependent on a number of factors, including if something else goes forward and what the project is. So I think people should just really understand that, and it does affect our bottom line. So thank you, though, for including that and being very clear. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Margaret, I would just add on that note for Director Houston, for the entire board, that approximately over the course of that 25 years, Metropolitan has provided $167 or so million to the recycled water program in the past. I know, Director Houston, you're talking about right now it's down to a trickle, but it totaled about 167 million over the course of the recycle program at the 25-year term of that agreement.
Oh, sure, that's a very good comment, and that's what really helped this program get off its feet and move along. And obviously, it's gone now. So again, why we're really having to look a lot more, you know, with closer eyes at this, you know, at our revenues and our expenses. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right, let me move on to the next section, which is the other revenues. And now I will turn your attention to page 28 of your board packet. So as I mentioned on the onset, we do have fixed capital payments that just come from our refineries, and you see them here listed. We've shown both the monthly amount, because that's how we bill it out to our customers, and then what the annual amount is. So you can see that we have about $8.3 million that we will receive per agreement in this fiscal year. We've also shared with you in that last column where that agreement is expected to terminate. And so you can see that they are in sort of, I'll say, our 5-year window. Although we just agreed to an agreement with Torrance Refining for nitrified, that agreement only goes up to August 2023, and that is so that it can match up to our boiler feed. And again, our approach to our fixed capital payments are different in that right now, when we are looking at these new agreements, then I'll say the new agreements are the Chevron boiler feed, as well as the Torrance Refining, the nitrified. Those particular ones are I'll say the more recent agreements, and those are based off of what are our expected R&R projects that they benefit from, or we're doing on behalf of them, that they're going to be paying us back for. And so you can see that what those numbers are. The other ones, the Chevron nitrified, the Marathon agreement, as well as the Torrance Refining and boiler feed, those are agreements that were put into place back in whatever period of time. They were 25-year agreements. And so you can see that that we, when we show sort of a 5-year outlook here, you can see that some of these things are going to start to fade off into those particular ones. For the assumptions for our 5-year, and you'll see that later on, we assume that that based off of these termination dates, that those fixed payments kind of go away. But that doesn't mean that as we are working towards negotiating new agreements that we won't see new revenues from it. It's just that without sort of being in the process where we have an agreement with them, we are showing sort of, like I said, once these dates come to that date, that that fixed payment ends. So it's an opportunity for us, I guess, is another way to say it. All right, moving on to the next slide, which is our standby charge. And our standby charge here is on page 29. This reflects our statutory authority to levy a standby charge, and we've been doing that since 1991. And historically, we've collected around $10 million associated with that. But back in 2017, a class action complaint was filed, and we entered into a settlement agreement around October 2020. So we're pending preliminary court approval, but based off of the terms of that settlement agreement, you can see what we anticipate being our standby charge collections based off of the number of parcels within each sort of category. Again, we have single family resident, we have multifamily resident, and non-residential. And then there is a consideration on what the rate should be based off of that settlement agreement. And so you can see that while we historically have collected $10 million across the years, we do anticipate that going to $6.1 million in 21-22. And then you can see the next few years there. You do see that it does drop back up in 24-25 at 7.6 million, and to its 8-year conclusion, again per the settlement agreement, yet to be approved by the court. It does show that that would our standby charge would end in June 30th, 2029, and you'll see those particular numbers within our 5-year assumption. And then finally to our other revenues, which is our interest income and our water use efficiency grants. And again, we're on page 30 of our presentation. So again, interest rate here is, again, we assume about a 1.5% based off of our cash balances. Again, just want to remind the board and to the public that we are basing it off of our investment policy, and that our objectives are safety, liquidity, yield, in that order. We want to make sure that we have safe investments, that they are liquid and available for us when we need it, and then we will look to achieve the highest yield appropriately. We are based off of a Merrill Lynch 1 to 3 year U.S. Treasury index. So again, something for you to say is like, how is our metrics, if you will, associated with that? And we estimate these earnings to be about $1 million. And then finally, to the water use efficiency grants, you've seen these numbers before. This was in the presentation on workshop number 2, but we do anticipate, based off of the programming that we have and the expenditures in those particular areas, that we should be receiving about $421,000. Again, that represents monies from Metropolitan Water District to support those programs. Also, we have some federal and state grants, and those are concluding in the next fiscal year. And so those are the dollars that you see in those particular areas. And with that, I'll take a pause before we go to the next section.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Going back to packet page 29, the standby charge, why does it increase instead of going down steadily each year?
Patrick, would you like to address that question?
Actually, your director to your question is it's going down and then comes back up. The way it's structured, and this is all pending approval of the court, that certain parts of the agency are being addressed differently in a different time frame. Like West Hollywood is being removed in a shorter time frame. It's not over the full 8 years, and the rest is over the full 8 years. And the way the calculation with all the various parcels with a pretty complicated rate structure, it will change. They're going to come out of the picture in, I believe, 24 months, if I'm not mistaken, Margaret. And then we go the rest of the that 8 year period with the balance of the agency. So there's a lot of moving parts in it, Director Deere, and they're not all happening at the same time. They're not all coming off the standby charge at the same time. Margaret, do you want to add anything to that?
I would just add that it's also my understanding that the rates are more impactful, if you will, in the first few years, and then they go back up, that we can collect more, and then after 2029, then it just drops flat. So we kind of have it start at the top, it goes down a little bit, goes back up, and then just goes all the way down after the 8th year.
But still, again, just for the record, it has to be approved by Judge Burrow, which has yet to happen.
Kind of odd, but thank you.
Alrighty. With that being said, let me just take us to the final section, which is our 5-year forecast assumptions. So again, what we're showing you here is that the in the 5-year forecast, these are again the words, and we'll show you the numbers next. That the imported tier 1 commodity rate to our customers is expected to adjust from 4 to 5.5% over the 5-year horizon, and that does include the MET pass-through. So MET pass-through is, from anywhere to 3 to 5%, and so that's why you see. So we're again assuming some increase in the future years. Again, board is even when the board does make a decision about fiscal year 21-22, it has not made any decisions about any of the other future years, because again, we do 1-year budget. But for the purposes of looking at sort of setting the rates, we do have a long-term view of what our rates should be. And so we make some assumptions about that, but we will review them each and every year, receive input from the board each and every year, and then at that time make a final recommendation for the board's consideration. In the 5-year assumption as well, we are assuming that, again, that's again on the ported water sales. Again, I'm just talking about the main components, which is the commodity rate, that first item there, the capacity charge, those 2 fixed charges, the capacity charge being one. Again, because we know that it's a pass-through, we're just assuming that revenues and expenses will be the same. And for our fixed service charge, that's depending upon what the increases are on the expense side. And again, as we shared in workshop number 2, that workshop number 2 said, hey, we're assuming, I believe, a 3% increase on programmatic expenses. So as that budget, from a 5-year perspective, we're showing that going up. So therefore, the fixed service charge will adjust. But again, each year will be reviewed, and each year the board will have input, and each year the board will then make a decision about it. But again, we want to show a 5-year forecast. So let's go on to the next slide, which is slide 33 in your packet, and this is the sales assumption. So I think there was a little confusion last month, on March 24th when we had workshop number 2. What I was trying to say in my point there, which is groundwater usage. We do anticipate that there will be an increase in groundwater usage over the next few years. The groundwater usage is not something that West Basin sells, but West Basin is impacted by it. And so while overall maybe the sales to our service area may remain unchanged, who's sort of benefiting from it, is it us or WRD, could be different. So here I wanted just to share with you that we're starting at a budget of 103 for our imported retail. It is going down by 1,000 acre-feet, but you also see that it's adjusting slightly less than that. It's because we also anticipate that as we convert individuals or businesses to recycled water, that they will no longer be taking imported water, and so you'll see a decrease there. So again, 1,000 acre-feet going down each and every year, as well as whatever adjustments that we see from our sales to our customers. On the Dominguez Gap, again, we are basing it off of this year. We will speak to WRD and the county as to how they anticipate those to go forward. But again, we've assumed that to be flat. And for the West Coast barrier, again, we assumed based off of the input that we received initially from WRD, and then we tweaked, if you will, the recycled side to a lower number, that we show 2,000 acre-feet for the West Coast barrier in 21-22. And then we assumed the 1,700, similar to the comments that Uzi made, that there's always going to be something from the imported water side, even though we want to deliver and are able to deliver 100% to the West Coast area at this time. But we do anticipate there will be something there. And then finally to our recycled water sales assumptions. And here is a little bit more detail here. So you can see that our disinfected tertiary or irrigation customers, you can see a slight uptick there. And again, this is an exciting opportunity as we look to move forward on that Palos Verdes lateral. I know that's another item that the board is in front of the board currently. But again, and we're making progress in that area. So you can see some sales there. We do sort of anticipate sort of remaining flat until we sort of see sort of what other sort of opportunities are there. But the larger, if you will, sort of impactful sort of work that we're doing, we're trying to incorporate. I mentioned to you about the barrier. Again, you see it lower in 21-22, going up to 13.8 in the following years. And again, historically, we've been at about a 15.5 overall injection into the West Coast barrier, and then we had that split between retail, potable, and the recycled. For the refineries, I've sort of grouped them all together, but just so that you can understand how much is going towards the various refineries. So in the area of the nitrified, that again would be the nitrified to Marathon, to Chevron, and to the Torrance refinery. You can see that it's slightly lower again in 21-22. Again, still feeling some of the impact, if you will, of the pandemic and coming out of those things and returning to normal operations. But then again, to remain relatively flat until there are opportunities for us to expand in those areas. Refineries on the low pressure, these are sales to the Marathon as well as to the Chevron. And you can see again, slight impact there. In the later years, you see that it does go up in 24-25. And again, this takes into consideration a recent action taken by this board to move forward with the improvements to the Marathon for the CEMF, the customized engineered microfiltration. So once that project is complete, we should see additional sales into that area. And then the high pressure, that is sales to Chevron at the high pressure component. And you can see that that remains relatively flat. So again, you can see the 5-year assumptions. And again, we wanted just to share the details to you so that you can see what are the sales behind sort of the numbers. So if I could, I'm going to now turn your attention to the next slide, which is the revenues. So based off of those assumptions and based off of what we've shared with you, you can see that this is what we anticipate our 5-year forecast to look like. Again, every year we will go back and every year we will take a look at it, the information, but you can see that the largest portion of that increase is what we expect to see in the imported water sales and what is expected by passing through those metropolitan water rate increases. And recycled water, again, what's changing there is slightly from the acre feet perspective, but also because of the increases that we expect to see because of the changes per the rates per the agreements. Standby charge, we shared you the schedule as we anticipate doing that and as things evolved from, if you will, from that discussion with the court on that, we'll see the impact here. And then fixed payments, as I mentioned to you, we see it starts at 8.3, 8.3. We then in August 23, again, we see a decline there. It's because, again, Torrance Refinery, that agreement ends in August 23, which is fiscal year 23-24. So again, we will continue to pursue them to, say, hey, we've got to do some R&R projects. You should pay your fair share. But until we have that agreement in place, we are showing that it's just based off of what agreements we have today. Fixed service charge, as I mentioned, we will match, if you will, sort of what the programmatic expenses are with that fixed revenue. So you can see slight increases based off of CPI. And other revenues, again, what we anticipate here is interest earnings, and then what we anticipate for our future programs as it relates to our water use efficiency incentives. And so again, as EJ and his team go out and pursue grants to be able to do new projects, we'll see costs, but we'll also see revenues here as well. And so that takes you to the very end of our presentation. I know we've had questions, but the last slide here is if there's any additional questions, any additional information that you would like us to incorporate into workshop number 4. But again, it's been my pleasure to be able to share with you the revenue side of the equation, the assumptions that are there. I will just say to you that overall, based off of the information that we have here, again, we have, as you mentioned, Director Alvarez, some questions as it relates to expenses, but based off of those expenses we shared with you, based off of those assumptions that we have here, we do, and the efforts of our refinancing and what we anticipate seeing as far as savings and our debt service going forward, we do anticipate showing that we can meet our target for fiscal year 21-22. And we are happy to be able to be in that position, especially as we go out into the market, to make sure that we can show to our rating agencies and to our investors that we are run efficiently and effectively so that we can meet the needs of our constituents. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back to you, President Williams, for any final questions or comments.
Well, thank you very much, staff. Very thorough report there, and you answered questions on the fly. That's good. but we still have time for a few more questions. Any more questions out there?
President
Maybe
Williams,
keep
I
them
will
short.
have questions.
Keep it short. All right, go ahead.
I'll try to keep it short. Okay. One is, I guess, a request. Going back to the last slide, not the question slide, but the slide before the question. When we're looking at the revenues, we get it's not very difficult to do, I don't think, but can we get a table that summarizes the net revenues without the pass-through? In other words, the imported water sale revenue of $160 million, a lot of that is the money that goes straight through to Metropolitan Water District. So what's the imported water sale revenues to us? And that would be based on, you know, our charge of $245 per acre foot, right?
Absolutely correct. I can certainly provide it to you.
So if we could see that, that would be helpful, so that we see what the
Absolutely.
net revenues to the district are.
Right, and I will just add that what I will do is, what I can show is sort of the net revenues from the reliability service charge and the fixed service charge, so you can see what is being brought in, and it's based off of those sales. Other ones, as you know, are dependent upon other reasons because of agreements or because of the standby charge or something like that. So, but I can certainly isolate that information for you.
Okay, and then to the slide before that, when we're looking at the 5-year forecast assumptions, I would like us to work to go 100% recycled water to the barrier. And that may be that we need to get together with WRD and the county, because right now we're not at 100% recycled water at the barriers. I understand the arguments that you guys all have presented, and I think we might be well served to work with WRD and the county to see why we can't be at 100% recycled water. Okay.
Okay.
The other kind of just generic comment that I have to make is I understand that right now we're looking at a balancing of expenditures and revenues, and therefore why we're seeing a net increase in our charge from $237 to $245 per acre foot. I would like to see information or what we need to do in order not to raise that at all. I think that there should be the ability to find more savings in order not to raise that rate.
And
So
so
as we move forward, I would not be supportive of any rate increases. Just put that out there.
and again, let me just clarify. Again, what you're asking is, because there is, in this year's budget, fiscal year 21-22, there isn't a rate increase. There is things going up and things going down. And what you're saying is that you don't want to see a rate increase in the reliability service charge, a component of our tier 1 rate. Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
That is correct. I do not want to see an increase in that or an increase in general, but yes.
So are you, then let me clarify one other question. When you say no increase in general, are you saying that on the pass-through from Metropolitan Water District, you want the district to absorb that? Is that what you're saying?
I would love to be able to absorb that, and I think I could probably find ways to do it, but I don't think it's doable right now.
Well,
I think that is something that
that's a board decision, so
Yes, it is. I'm just expressing my opinion.
okay. And then let me ask also too, on our recycled water, where we do have agreements that do stipulate that we have to have increases in our recycled water. Are you saying too that you don't want to see increases there?
No, I want to see, especially with the refineries, full cost recovery.
Okay. So thank you for clarifying. I just want to make sure when you say I don't want to see rate increases, there are various components. There's pass-through, those are set by agreement, and then there's those, like I said, those two levers in West Basin's imported water tier 1 rate. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chair.
Go for it.
Okay, back on the, I think it was the next to last slide, but you know, for what it's worth, packet page 34 on the recycled water sales. Can you just tell me again why we're maxing out or topping out in the last 3 columns or last 2 columns? Like tertiary, 4,810 acre feet. And then of course, for a total recycled water sales is, you know, in the years 24, 25, 25, 26, 38,800. So why is it that we're just estimating at this point that we're going to max out at that and not be higher up, or?
So I'm assuming that is based off of how we are, the capacity that we have designed it to be and what we're able to do. I know that there's a separate sort of discussion at, you know, through E&O and actually at a separate board meeting as it talks about the recycled water master plan, and that, you know, there would probably need to be some additional investments to see higher sales there. Again, you know, without sort of going into sort of what are those projects that are, you know, out there in your 4, 5, 7, whatever, we are showing that, you know, based off of our current investment today, these are, I believe, where we can be at. And that is, you know, largely looking at sort of where our trends have been and what the customers are telling us and how they're managing their operations.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Margaret. I mean, it's a very valid response. Obviously, I think that this is one of those things the board should be looking at and understanding. We should be getting bigger numbers here, more recycled water sales in the next, you know, 4 or 5 years. So this is very telling that this is what we're estimating. And then my only other thing, and this was a very thorough presentation, but yes, for the record, remember I voted against raising the water rates last year, which, you know, that was in big part because it was the pass-through from Metropolitan. I didn't agree with what was done. So, you know, obviously those are things that get passed down to us, but that's where I stood last year. So of course, I'll be watching what types of rate increases we're continuing to look at increasing to our customers. So thank you.
Chairman Williams?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly to add on to Margaret's answer to Director Houston regarding the sales projections for recycled water on package page 34. You're right, that was a good answer, Margaret. The recycled water master plan, depending on what we do with that, and we haven't finalized or made it, the board hasn't made a decision with us to what projects are in or out, could change those numbers, but we haven't got to that point yet. So this is a sort of a conservative looking at 5 years based on projects that are on the books currently, but that could change one way or another when we finalize the whole recycled water master plan discussion. That's all I had.
Well, okay, anything else? Okay, I just want to have a request too at the end here. I would like to know over the past 5 years, how has West Basin been attacked because of our budgetary actions? That's what I want to know. Where have we been deemed by the public, by the press, that our spending is out of whack? And and I just want to know that, and where our customers have indicated that they're not happy with the way we run our business. So with that, and hearing no other questions, I will adjourn this meeting.
Well, President Houston, we if you wanted to run through the rest of the agenda, we don't have any closed session today.
There's nothing here.
Okay.
Okay.
No more director comments, cut. All right.
Now